So on average, a marketplace to reach $100 million, they had to, and to be honest with you, I don't think working in Pakistan and building a startup in Pakistan, that's a luxury we have, unless there is one or two like such big checks come in. But on the other hand, I think this is where we have to be a bit more innovative as compared to the rest of the world.
Right.
If we really want to go on that path of generating $100 million revenue from a marketplace, we will have to be very smart.
Right.
The unit economy is not going to work in our favor by just being paid.
Right.
By just not really providing people that utility that they want to have.
Right.
So we have to be very smart that you really provide that utility to people, and then you have built a lot of pieces in a way that they make the unit economy work in your favor.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Scalable, a podcast by COLABS where we talk to founders and investors in Pakistan on building their companies and firms here in the local market. Today we've got Arif Iqbal with us, who's the co-founder and CEO of LAAM, a fashion marketplace in Pakistan. Thank you so much, Arif, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
For sure, pleasure to be here.
Right. So let's just start with the regular ones. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. You spent your childhood in Pakistan, you graduated from Pakistan, and then I think you went to the US and you worked at different technology companies over there. So tell us a little bit about your career, and then we'll move on to, how did you end up co-founding LAAM?
Yeah, so was student who wanted to be an engineer always.
Right.
Realized in late 90s, early 2000s.
So you were born in Lahore?
Born in Lahore,
right.
Raised in Lahore.
Right.
Almost all the education in Lahore.
Right, okay.
Ended up going to FAST Lahore.
Right.
For doing a bachelor's in computer science.
Right.
Graduated in 2005.
Wow, yeah.
So
it's been long.
It's been a while.
Right.
Yes. आजकल जो बच्चे हायर होते हैं they keep telling me
right,
oh,
okay.
that batch.
Okay.
उसके बाद I did my own startup in Pakistan before Microsoft hired me and they took me to Vancouver, Canada.
So you graduated in Pakistan and you did your own startup like in 2005?
2006.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
What were you trying to build?
We were trying to build basically a browser plugin with the notion that people would be able to connect with people with similar interests. So let's say if Arif Iqbal continuously goes and visits AI websites and machine learning websites and you do the same, there is a high likelihood that you might be interested in having a conversation with each other.
This sounds very interesting and useful, to be honest. I mean, it could have, transformed, evolved into a professional network.
Yeah. So the idea was that, again, that is back in those days, Facebook had just launched. So our idea was that we want to create a network of people with similar interests.
Okay.
But I think realized at that stage, 1.5-2 साल के बाद के building a startup in Pakistan, funding का तो concept ही नहीं था.
Right.
And also around not many people who have done it before.
Right.
And got this opportunity. Microsoft used to come to UAE to hire folks, so I got an opportunity to go there for interview. They hired me directly into one of their pretty solid teams in Bing.com.
Right.
उसकी machine learning और relevance build करनी थी.
How old is Bing?
So I was part of the team जिसने Bing launch किया था.
Right. Okay.
So it used to be called Live Search.
Yeah. It was Live Search. Yes, I remember. I remember.
So when I joined, it was like a team of I think 150 or 200 people.
Right.
With the notion we want to launch our search engine that will compete Google. So
it wasn't really live back then. The team was building it.
The team was Microsoft. Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer had decided they want to put in a lot of investment.
Right.
And they wanna take on Google.
Right. Okay.
Because Google was coming into a lot of stuff, right?
Right.
Browser and email and workspace and all those things. So they wanted to go after Google by building a search engine.
Right.
So वहाँ से वो investment थी. And I went there in 2008. I think we launched Bing late 2009 or early 2010.
Right, okay.
So about 1.5 years after I joined.
Right. And then, from there, what was next? Like you worked on Bing, you helped it go live. You obviously played a small part in it, and then what happened?
So from there, I had this interesting journey. I spent about 4 years of my life in building a search engine, and I spent a couple years after that in growing a marketplace called eBay.
Right.
and then I spent a couple of years in building a discovery engine called Pinterest.
Right.
And then I spent a good close to 5 years in building different things inside Facebook, from search again to recommendation systems to one of the product that they were bringing into Facebook, Instagram called Shops.
Right.
So these are the three products I worked on Facebook.
But all this time you were basically writing code.
अच्छा मेरे career का interesting transition रहा है. When I joined eBay, after like a quarter or so they were growing very fast, so I transitioned into an EM role.
Right.
So I started leading a team which was called a science team back then inside the machine learning team.
Right.
फिर I wanted to be again an IC, so I went back and joined Pinterest as an IC. But after 3 months, again I transitioned into leadership.
Right.
फिर I went back again into an IC.
Right,
So maybe you can see how confused I was.
Right. Okay.
But I think मुझे उसमें होता था कि I wanted to go back and do something again. फिर उसके बाद थोड़े से realize होता था maybe leadership is a better path to continue to grow, और जब मेरी उधर की leadership होती थी वो भी they continue to push in this direction. फिर I think in the last 8 or 9 years before starting LAAM, I have probably spent 5 years as in leadership roles and 4 years as IC.
Right. And you were at Facebook. I mean, that was your last job when you thought about starting LAAM and moved back to Pakistan.
Yes.
So how did this happen? I mean, somebody who has been, in different engineering roles as an IC or maybe, in leadership, decides to come back to Pakistan first of all, and then, goes into building a fashion marketplace. What's the background?
Achha, the core reason it happened was that my younger brother was running agency जिसका goal था to enable fashion brands go online.
Right.
So I was there. वो होता नहीं है family का एक tech.
Right. Okay. So he would reach out to you for different.
Yeah. So essentially, like I was like, e-commerce is the next big thing, and it's very simple and very straightforward. So वो वाली agency kind of like transition into an agency जिसका मकसद था to enable e-commerce for decent good businesses.
Right.
But वहाँ से होना ये शुरू हो गया कि I got to know a bit more about how this operates, and I had lived my life obviously in Lahore for a good time. फिर उसके बाद जब मैंने माइक्रोसॉफ्ट जाना था तो obviously US का वीज़ा थोड़ा सा टाइम लेता है, तो they sent me to Vancouver, Canada.
Right.
From there I had moved to Seattle, the headquarters.
Right.
And from there I moved to Bay Area when I had to go work for Pinterest and Facebook. So I had lived my life in different places, और वहाँ पे एक common theme मैं भी देख रहा था कि यार हमारा जो South Asian fashion है, Pakistani, Indians, Bangladeshis, all of my friends and colleagues are extremely interested in that, but not accessible.
Right.
और businesses को जो digitize करना है, वो जो agency करने की कोशिश कर रही है, doesn't seem very scalable. Like how does it all come into picture? वहाँ से एक notion build होना शुरू हो गई थी कि for such a massive industry where so many people are passionate about it, why nobody has tried to digitize it?
Right.
So this is my thinking back in like 2018, 2019.
Right.
And the idea was there should be something like that.
Right.
I still wasn't certain that I would go out and build something like that. But वहाँ से वो post start हुआ. फिर एक थोड़ा सा उसमें फिर ये news भी आ रही थी कि Pakistani startup ecosystem is developing.
Right.
I wanted to do a bit more meaningful thing in life rather than working for big tech companies, to be honest.
Right.
Or I had that unfinished thing in life. जब मैंने एक startup अपनी पाकिस्तान में करने की कोशिश की थी with all the journey. So a lot of such thoughts kept coming कि यार with all the things I've learned, they could go back, make an impact, massive industry that can be digitized. So that kind of like really brought in the foundation.
So when you thought of doing this, and as you explained, the agency model was not scalable, but when you look at it from the perspective of a brand, they were already shipping to international customers using different shipping options available in Pakistan, and reaching out to these customers, or offering them their products through products like Facebook ads, or in some cases somebody in the US would maybe log on to Google and type in Sobia Nazir or any of these brands, and they'd end up finding those brands, and they would have nice Shopify websites that they can buy from. So when you started thinking about this, I mean, did you not fear that brands would not want to become part of something like this? And speaking of this, let's also talk about, okay, you wanted to do this. What was the first step after you had made this decision, and how did you get your, I mean, what was the MVP like? These are, I think, 2-3 different questions, if you can take them one by one.
Yeah, I think the first thing, when we went after the problem we want to solve, there are two sides of it, right? One is the consumer side.
Right, yeah.
The other is the business side.
Right.
So for the consumer side, I believe our idea was we really want to bring ability for people to discover South Asian fashion.
Right.
So for example, on Eid, when I have to buy a kurta shalwar myself, I click on the kurta shalwar category at LAAM, and I get almost 8 to 10,000 kurta shalwars.
Right.
So for me, then I can apply those filters that I want it under $40. Then I can apply that filter, I only want bright colors.
Right.
So our idea was that what we really want to bring in from a consumer perspective is our discoverability.
Right, okay.
So that was the notion that we really want to go after.
Right.
The second thing was that if we think about from a business perspective, I mean, you called out they can build their websites and they can start to do shipping. But if you go and sit down with any business and you ask them that, how do you ship to USA?
Yeah.
They would say that, oh, we go and we create a shipment in DHL.
Yeah, it costs them a lot of...
costs a lot of money, and they create 7 forms, and we go fill each one of these forms.
Okay.
And then the shipment gets created. So the way they were trying to digitize their business is probably as inefficient as it can get.
Right, okay.
So our idea was that first, and for us, like I think one thing that we always believed is going to help us is that at the end of the day, businesses would go to any place where they believe that they can acquire customers.
Right, absolutely.
They would go to SEO because they believe Google is going to give them customers. They would go post on Instagram,
right,
because that's going to give them reach and customers.
Right.
So if there is another place which is really dedicated of this passionate South Asian fashion lovers, they would go there and acquire customers. So that was the hypothesis that we were going after.
Right.
And to be honest, like most of the businesses who in the first year were like, oh, we don't go to marketplaces. But when they heard from another business that, oh, we got XYZ orders from LAAM, they started looking at us differently.
Right.
That, oh, that's another acquisition channel for them.
Right.
In terms of consumers. And your second question was
what was the initial product like? I mean, and you've said that some of these brands they started coming because they heard from other brands who had come on LAAM that they were getting a decent amount of orders. But how did you get your first brands? Was it easy because of Scalable, the agency that your brother was running, or?
Absolutely. So Amir, who's obviously who's running Scalable, is a co-founder in LAAM. For us, there was credibility in the industry that if these folks are doing something, they are the ones who have been running e-commerce for us for a while. So it wasn't like there is a new player that's telling them that give us your supply and they will run away with it.
Right.
So there was that element of credibility, and obviously there was also that angle of credibility. Someone who was working at Facebook is now coming back and trying to do this.
Right.
So I think the first 10, 20 brands, that helped a lot.
Right.
If that wasn't the case, it would be very hard to bring in good 10, 15, 20 names, which we started with.
Right.
The second notion around like the thought process, and this is a philosophy that I follow in whatever we build, which I think Brian Chesky has put it really well, which is around that if you want to build any business or any product, do it in a way that it won't scale, because you want to do it fast.
Right.
You want to really understand whether your hypothesis is working or not. So we went with the exact same thought process.
Right.
We kind of like looked at Shopify, put a few products together, did a decent UI that would give some discovery, and really figured out whether it's a product market fit or not, whether it's going to work or not. So we ended up launching it very, very quickly. After I kind of decided you want to go in this path, I put off my true scalable engineering and product hat with the notion we want to do it like quickly to validate.
Right.
And if it's the validation is there, we will build whatever is needed.
Right. And what was it like? I mean, how did you find your first customers then? And what was the feedback like early on?
So the first customer, I think there is one thing that there are a couple of areas we thought about. One is that we thought that social presence is going to matter a lot. So what if we think about it this way, that LAAM is trying to enable the discovery of South Asian fashion, but we can have the same concept under every platform. So for example, under Facebook, Instagram, we can think that there is a channel
Right.
that exactly does that.
Right.
So it would provide people that these are the best langas
Right.
or kurta shalwar or
Right.
sarees out there. So we used, and I think that really helped us. So people started looking at it on social media as a place that's putting a lot of content around our South Asian, Pakistani fashion. And they started following that.
Right.
And that audience started to grow. I think now we have 3.5 million followers across channels.
Oh, wow.
So we really pushed on it, and I think people connected with it. It was a single place where they can discover fashion. The other thing we went after was basically like digital marketing in general, like ads and stuff. So putting beautiful pictures and all of our USPs that this is what you would get by buying from LAAM, and then slowly people started to roll in. And as soon as they would look at something like this, oh, I can combine brand A and brand B, and the combined shipping is cheaper.
Right.
So people started doing their math, and they would reach out to those designers in the early days and asking that are these guys legit?
Right. Right.
And some of these things started to work out, and ball started to roll, and then the network effect and everything started to kick in.
Right, right. So when you initially thought of it, from what you've shared, I am assuming that majority of the focus was on international customers who would want to buy from Pakistan.
Yeah.
When did that change? Did it change after the launch, or you had made mind that made your mind that you would go after both these segments from the very beginning?
So Zubair, interestingly, our plan in the very early days was that we want to start with what we think is luxury or very high-end fashion.
Which is customizable.
Also customizable, but
Right.
not in all the cases.
Right,
It
okay.
could still be sold in like small, medium, large sizes.
Right.
But you can also customize it.
Okay.
And more or less, the reason was that because we were not ready to scale. So think about it this way, that if you're not ready to scale, you can go after a more luxury item, but that you don't have to deal as many units
Right.
as you want to. So
Yeah.
we deliberately went after very high-end luxury,
Right.
and we wanted to start from there. But the vision from the day one was always like, we really want to fulfill discoverability and the reliability of fashion need across
Right.
this like Pakistani and South Asian fashion. So we very deliberately started on the high end, and the idea was that we will start to go to the next phases. I'm going to quote something which is weird, but like if you look at Tesla, they went after the Roadster and then Model S, and then they come to the Model. So we internally use this, like we will go after the high end,
Right,
and then we
okay.
will continue to come
Right.
in and
Okay.
go in the masses and try to cover
Right. Right.
every aspect of it.
Right. Right. And at what point did you figure out that you have product market fit? What is it?
Yeah.
What happened? What was that trigger
Yeah.
that told you that you?
I think we wanted to get 1,000 orders.
Right.
We wanted to
An
get
aggregate of
1,000 orders.
Right.
We wanted to be on somewhat of a $1 million run rate of sales.
Right.
So to be really feeling that this has started to work out.
Right.
And I think we were able to achieve that relatively fast in the 5-6 months time period.
Right. Now, LAAM has been very quiet about, their fundraising. Obviously,
Yeah.
like people in the ecosystem know that you have raised money, but you haven't announced it. Tell us a little bit on that. First of all,
Yeah.
if you're open to sharing how
Yeah.
much have you raised and who have you raised from, and why did you, stay quiet about it?
So I raised a very small pre-seed round, mostly from my friends and colleagues in Seattle
When you were coming back.
when I left Facebook. This
Right.
is
So you technically did not really bootstrap the business.
We did bootstrap for the first 6 months when we were
Okay.
trying to figure out whether it's a product market fit or not.
Okay, so after PMF you...
Yes.
Right.
After that, and we were like decent. Like as I said, we were almost on $1 million
Run rate,
of
right,
sales.
okay.
And then we raised a small round of what's called pre-seed or
From angels only, from your friends
Yeah.
in the US.
yeah. And it was like, to be honest with you, like it was relatively very quick
Right.
because we just notified a few people that we are thinking of raising, and
They came in with checks.
Yeah, they came in with checks very quickly. So I wanted to raise $500,000, but we ended up raising like almost $750,000
Right.
back then.
Right.
And after that, we did a seed round, and we raised around $2.5 million. in that seed round.
And when was this? Like you raised the pre-seed 6 months after starting LAAM in Pakistan, and then when did you raise the seed round?
This is in Q1 2022.
Right.
Yeah.
So the way you were building this platform, I mean, I can maybe, discuss this in more detail than anything else, because we also tried building. I mean, obviously we approached it slightly differently. We were highly focused on the tech product that we were building, and it did not work out. Maybe at some point I'll share those details. I'll share my lessons, but I mean, the few things that we learned while we were building Flare was that it is very difficult to please the Pakistani customers. I mean, no matter what you do, they'd find reason, and I don't blame them for this. Obviously, any customer, anyone spending their money, hard-earned money, on anything, and particularly on fashion, especially when it's women, they would want it to be delivered really fast. They would want it to look as it does on the website. I mean, the colors should not look different and all. So what were some of your biggest assumptions about Pakistan as a market and Pakistani consumers that were proven wrong after you started working on LAAM?
I think I would say that there are a lot of assumptions that were wrong, both for businesses and consumers.
Right.
Both sides.
Right.
I think, as you said, it's the expectation that maybe like the expectation is not the right word. Maybe they don't give you a lot of room for error.
Right. Okay.
If you go wrong, they will really tell you that you went wrong. So you have to be a lot more careful of some of the core pieces that you develop. And I think we learned these lessons, to be honest, in the first 6 months.
Right.
So I think for me, one of the worst things that happened after starting LAAM was that initially we went after and called it that, and I wrote our mission statement that we are the ones who really want to enable South Asian fashion discovery or Pakistani fashion discovery. Then we changed it to South Asian fashion discovery. But I did not put in the term of reliability with it.
Right.
So then later on we changed it, and we changed it for a reason.
Right.
We want to enable discovery of fashion and reliably deliver it.
Right.
Because the problem is that I looked at it in a way that so I have a lot of friends who work in cloud business. I was in Seattle, which is the cloud capital of the world, Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. Everything is built there. So the core notion of everything that they were building in storage and all the cloud was that they were trying to build a reliable infrastructure on top of unreliable machine, right?
Right.
So I thought of LAAM in a very similar way, that there potentially is a lot of unreliable fashion businesses. Can we build a reliable platform in the same notion on that? And then we thought about like, how do we enable that reliability? And I think that reliability is something which I believed is a lot more stronger after working in a few months. And then we had to be, I think in this market, you have to be very smart, because as the middle player of a marketplace, one side is a business, the other side is a consumer. How do you play it right? So for example, there is a made to order custom outfit, and somebody pays, let's say, 10,000 rupees for it.
Yeah.
And then eventually the customer is like, I don't need it anymore. But the business has started building that custom.
Yeah.
What do you do? So if you are Amazon, you would just be like, oh, customer always first and return the money. But what about the business now?
Right.
We started building it. So we had to like very deeply think about some of those problems as a middle player. How do we balance it between the business and the consumers, and what are the different risks or losses we are going to take in the middle?
Right.
And taking those losses in the middle, would it still be a what you call like a possible to build a business?
Yeah, would it make business sense? To do that. I mean, speaking of this, when you're a marketplace, and I mean, I'd love for you to talk about that as well. Your model, because I think LAAM is doing a couple of things. It is a marketplace, but it also has an inventory that it has blocked from designers for their certain collections and all. Maybe you can talk a little bit on that. But what I'd really like to understand is generally the margins or the take rate, if we call it that, in marketplaces is very thin for it to make business sense. I mean, these are largely driven by VC money, you know. I mean, if you look at Noon, they have been burning a lot of capital, but obviously it's, you know, they're horizontal, there are a lot of differences. This is focused on a particular niche, if we may call it that, and or a category, and you're obviously trying to do things differently. But what are the economics like? I mean, what were they like when you first started, and how have they evolved with the scale? And you know, if you can talk a little bit on the model as well.
So I think one thing that we always are very particular about. So LAAM, with the run rate that we are at, we probably have raised less money than anyone else to get to that run rate.
Right.
Maybe like 5x less money than anyone else to get to that run rate. And the primary reason is that whenever we see something which we believe is not the right thing for unit economy, we don't do it just for the sake of growth. And this is not for now, which has become very, I mean, again, like there's a very strong VC push coming now. Don't do these things. But even when we had a lot of money, we were very cautious about that. Oh, this is not, unit economy doesn't work here.
Right.
So we'll back off.
Right.
So that is, I think, one thing that we have been doing. And again, like if we look at it, there is always like that percentage of commission that you need to have for the unit economy to work.
Right.
If it goes below that, maybe you can take a couple of calls here or there when it's something very, very important for your perception, but you can't make those calls enough times.
All the time.
All the time, or enough times for you to be.
So for example, if it's an X brand that's very big, that LAAM really wants to have, that consumers want to see on LAAM, you may be a little flexible with that, but it's not the case, you know, for every day.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, it's not like LAAM is trying to do that. If you go to any offline retailer, in Lahore, like one of those like Salim Fabrics or Raja Saab, and you go to their shop, let's say they are taking an average commission of 25 or 20, but there would be a few brands that they have in their shop which is 8, 7.
Right.
And the reason they have that is that one is so popular.
Because they have the pull. These brands bring the customers onto your platform or, you know, your shop, and then you sell them other stuff as well.
So we took a few learnings out of those offline, that how exactly are they working out, and they are working in the same way.
Right.
But you can't do it if, like for Salim Fabrics, if 30% of their inventory is selling that way, then the business model for them is not going to work out. It can only be like 5% or 10%, and we have been very cautious in that way. So this is one of the reasons I think we were able to scale out with the unit economy continue to work in our favor.
Right. So, I mean, if we go a little deep into this and we try to sort of understand, you know, you may not want to talk about it, but what you're trying to say is that LAAM is effectively not burning a lot of money today to get those orders that it does, and that is primarily because of the strong brand that you've been able to build, that people think of whenever they are looking to buy fashion, or it has more to that, and in that more is, I mean, how big of a role SEO has played.
So we are not burning money as such anymore. There are good and bad months. Obviously, Muharram is going to be a month in Pakistan in fashion, which is
very
active.
slow.
So if you look at it from a larger perspective for the year, so we are not really burning money.
Right.
But primarily, if I have to say, is that if you look at companies who end up burning money, they are burning money in one or two particular categories.
Right.
So if you look at all the businesses that are in retail, for them, they need a lot of capital injection for acquiring inventory.
Right.
If you look at businesses that are kind of like apps who are to acquire consumers, they spend a lot of money in acquiring consumers.
Right.
So let's say I want to get 10,000 orders, and every order is going to cost me $10. So that's $100,000 a burn.
Right.
So as for us, I think one thing that really worked out is what we call internally as organic acquisition.
Right.
So for us, organic acquisition is threefold, right? One is through what you just called out, SEO.
Right.
So you have to be good in that. Working in search helped definitely.
Right. Okay.
So the second thing is what we thought of is that we want to enable the discovery in social media, those channels that LAAM has created on Instagram, and we have now created like very specialized channels as well. There is a channel called LAAM Couture, which helps brides.
Right.
There is a channel called LAAM Men,
Right.
which is probably the discovery place for men to come in and shop.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'd like to understand something here. Now, whenever we talk about organic reach on these social media platforms, what we hear is that it is almost dead. There's just nothing left out there. Even, in some cases, for 1 million followers on Instagram, you'd get, maybe 100 people liking or engaging on an Instagram post. So how does that work? I mean, yes, you've built a large following on these platforms, but has it actually helped in translating into orders on laam.pk?
It definitely has.
All right.
And the way is that I believe that we are trying to do marketing or social in a different way, which is data driven. If I tell you that you have 100 outfits to post, which one would you pick?
Right.
What if you have some data-driven decision-making here?
Right.
And you take out some patterns out of it, that what works and what doesn't work. And then you consistently go choose that this is going to work. Same goes for influencer marketing. If I give you an outfit and you have 100 influencers, and you want to give it to 100 influencers, well, how would you decide which influencers to go after?
Right.
So I believe that one of the notions that I saw that a lot of people call out this doesn't work is because they are not data-driven.
Okay.
So I think one thing that we did was for our organic channels, we would always be very data-driven.
Right.
And we'll think about like how do you acquire customers in those organic channels and data-driven. And the third bracket, obviously one is search, the other is like there's discovery on social channels, and the third is what we call out as like this network effect.
Right.
Which we get
consumers. Which is kicking in which has maybe kicked in the last 6 to 8 months or an year.
About last year.
Right.
Yeah. So it came in after 1 year of your journey where people started to call out, oh, by the way, this is a place where I got my outfit and I was able to bundle 5 different designers together.
Right.
So, and those people, especially like globally, really start to bring in their friends, their family members, their small pocket of social community.
Right. So, I mean, whenever I talk to anyone, about my experience of building Flair, again, I'd plug that in. I tell them, man, I actually share example of a few players in Pakistan when I tell them this. It is very difficult to build a consumer internet business in Pakistan unless you have an organic channel that is producing a decent amount of orders for you. It just cannot work on paid acquisition. You just cannot do that in Pakistan because the economics, unfortunately, just don't make sense. If you're only relying on paid acquisition, maybe you can do that for 2 years. Maybe, you can subsidize the product. But what would happen when, the money goes away? And the examples that I share are LAAM and Priceoy, these two in particular, because these two, I mean, from where I did not really think much about the socials. Obviously, the reach was very big and all, but any designer that you can think of in Pakistan, if it's on LAAM and you search their name, LAAM is perhaps the first result and the designer is second. Yeah. So they've done really well. I mean, you've done really well, and Priceoy has also done really well. Obviously, they started as a price comparison website and have then moved into selling these products themselves, which has helped them. I mean, it's a great story, but without an organic channel, I don't think it's possible to build a consumer internet business in Pakistan. B2B, maybe, enterprise, maybe, yes, but you cannot do consumer in Pakistan without an organic channel.
I think I would probably add that is that maybe if I have to generalize your statement, I would generalize it by it's very hard to scale a business without the unit economy working in your favor, right?
Right, yeah, so, absolutely. That's another way to look at it.
And here is an interesting article I was reading over the weekend. That article was very interesting topic. How much money different companies raised to reach to $100 million in revenue?
Right.
And then my deep question was that for marketplaces, on average, how much money do they have to raise to reach to $100 million in revenue.
Or GMV?
Revenue.
Revenue, right. Okay.
So GMV is easy, right?
Right, okay. Yeah.
So for marketplaces, I think the number, if I'm not misquoting, was around $300 million.
Wow.
So on average, a marketplace to reach $100 million, they had to, and to be honest with you, I don't think working in Pakistan and building a startup in Pakistan, that's a luxury we have, unless there is one or two like such big checks come in. But on the other hand, I think this is where we have to be a bit more innovative as compared to the rest of the world.
Right.
If we really want to go on that path of generating $100 million revenue from a marketplace, we will have to be very smart.
Right.
The unit economy is not going to work in our favor by just being paid.
Right.
By just not really providing people that utility that they want to have.
Right.
So we have to be very smart that you really provide that utility to people, and then you have built a lot of pieces in a way that they make the unit economy work in your favor.
Right, right. This is absolutely right. I mean, when we look at an e-commerce marketplace or an e-commerce business in Pakistan, apart from customer acquisition, there are a few other things that any player is spending money on. One of them is, for example, doorstep returns. People would order stuff, and so what happened. What I saw, when we were doing Flare, is that if somebody is looking for a specific outfit that has just launched, let's say on Maria B or any of these designers, I mean, if it's one of their latest collections, they normally order that outfit from 5 places and on COD, and whoever delivers first, they would receive it, and the rest of the 4 would be doorstep returns. So doorstep returns is, one thing. Then obviously managing your logistics and keeping the cost down while also ensuring that you're able to offer, a quick delivery. You're able to get a product to a customer by next day or the day after, and they don't have to play a guess game on when it would arrive. So talk a little bit on that. How have you managed logistics for building LAAM and where it is at today?
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about that when we thought about bringing in that element of reliability.
Yeah.
We were hit with this bitter truth that nobody can really bring in that reliability without scaling out their supply chain and warehousing systems. So we made a call about 1.5 years ago. This is Q1 2022. We had just raised a bit of money.
Right, okay.
So we made a call that we really have to go and build that smartly. So I ended up going to even like Amazon warehouses to understand how they operate, how they work.
Okay.
From there, we built something which we think of it internally as FPL, Fulfilled by LAAM model.
Right.
So all the businesses that are on LAAM, they essentially get that for free.
I see.
So you can host as much inventory as you want.
Right.
We don't say that there are any extra charges.
Right.
And we provide real-time system, which is from your doorstep to LAAM warehouse to consumer. We provide you all visibility that, you have sent us 12,000 units. They are now entered into our warehouse. 3,000 of them are in transit. 6,000 of them is something that you can ask back. So we provided and built all of that system. So in that system, I think one thing that we realized that the truth and the reality is what you just called out, that people are going to order and a lot of people are going to decide that they will change their mind from the time of ordering. So we thought we will solve this problem in a very from a technological perspective. And so what we did was that we kind of for orders that have a long dispatch time, we would double check with customers automatically.
Before it gets delivered to them, right?
Before it gets delivered to them. The second thing we did was that if it's a truth that every 10% or 15 or 20% of the packages are going to get back, let's optimize the hell out of it. So right now our return system processes a package in 13 seconds.
I see.
And get it back to the inventory.
Right.
So as a result, we know that every 100 packages we send, a good percentage of them are going to come back.
Right.
But we're able to process it with blazing speed.
Right.
And they become part of the
inventory again that can be sold.
Sell again.
Right.
And there is a possibility there is already an order waiting for that.
Right.
So as soon as it becomes part of the inventory, it's shipped out immediately.
Right. So that has helped you in a big way. Right. Okay. What have been some of the other challenges of building a startup in Pakistan?
Yeah.
I mean, not just marketplace, just any startup in
Yeah.
Pakistan, what have been some of the biggest learnings, challenges?
Yeah, if I go back in time and I think about that, working at Pinterest, I was surrounded by people who had built, a good chunk of people who had built other startups, who had worked in other startups, had some notion of what does it mean to be building a product company.
Right.
Up here, I think we are still going through that phase that the number of people who have done this is very, very limited.
Right.
So as a result, I believe that from 2020 to 2025, we are really building, all of us together, the first batch of such people
Right.
who understands what does it mean to build a startup, what does
Right.
it mean to build a product, what does it mean to build a local product that scales.
Right.
So I think as a result, it's very hard to find people.
Right.
You have to train people from the get-go. I think that has been a massive challenge that I would say. The other I think I would say is that is probably across some of the notions of higher expectation from consumers and businesses
Right.
that you talked about. So there is that very high expectation, and making mistake is not an option. I think I've learned it the hard way. And now whenever we are launching a feature, whenever we are talking about any new contract, I look at and deeply study
Right.
what if things go south.
Right.
How do you think about it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not easy. I can totally relate to that. Who is LAAM's competition in Pakistan now? Who are you competing with? Are you competing with the designers who sell on your platform in any way? I mean, you
So,
are result number
yeah.
1 on Google for their name, so
Yeah.
I don't know how they feel about it.
So the way I would call it is that, and this is something that I keep reminding myself and the people that work in the company, is that when we started LAAM, we started with this one mission that we want to enable the digitization of this industry. So the way we look at competition is very, very different, to be honest. Like, we are not that brutal that, oh, A versus B. We believe that if I look at the Pakistani economy right now, like, I mean, from the numbers I see everywhere, $25-ish billion is spent on fashion,
Okay.
consumer spending.
Right.
But the amount of it online is very, very negligible.
Right.
Maybe it's less than 3%
Right.
of that, 3-4% of that.
Right.
So as a result, I think everybody that's working on digitization are the not competition. The real competition is what's happening in the retail on the ground.
Right.
So I think for me, if I think about it, the conversion of that into online is the biggest competition.
Right.
Or is the biggest opportunity that
Right.
you can talk about.
Right.
Otherwise, I think one thing that we know is that in terms of our volume or our presence, we would definitely be by a good margin, the largest player in Pakistani fashion now, or even in the global South Asian play. We have
Right.
one decent big player. But at the same time, when we look at the entire fashion spend and we look at the dot that we are doing today, it feels very insignificant
Right.
of the possibilities out there. So trying to make a mark and
Right.
grow that pie.
Right. Right. Speaking of, building a fashion platform, I mean, when you use the word South Asia and when you changed it, I mean, from
Yeah.
Pakistan to South Asia, what exactly were you thinking? Like, I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to assume that you have
Yeah.
plans to maybe, source inventory from India and sell it on LAAM. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe yes, but I mean, I'd like to think that's not the case.
So right now, this year itself, we are going to ship a Pakistani product to 100 plus countries,
I see.
to 7,500 plus cities in the world.
Right.
And we are the largest consumer exporter out of Pakistan now.
So, when you say this, do you mean that you're actually going to ship to, or you are probably going to receive orders from all these markets, or you can technically ship to these markets?
We can-
Doesn't mean that you would receive or not receive an order from these.
We ship to these markets.
You ship to these markets,
Yes.
yeah, right. But like, I mean, the orders that come to LAAM, they are maybe from 15, 20 markets, or is that
No, so then I'm only talking about the data where we have shipped a product.
where you have shipped the product?
Yes.
So that is 100 plus markets.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So as a result, I think one thing that we start to recognize and realize is that the people who are buying from us, I mean, I would find names where you can build a simple classifier and tell that, oh, this person is from A,
Right.
B, and
Okay.
C.
Okay.
So we would look at it is that what we ended up building is one of the largest catalog of ethnic fashion, right?
Right.
So as a result, like I was in a gathering in Surrey, Canada, which is a predominant community from India and
Right.
Punjab.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was there and I was like in an event and there were people who of that community who knew about LAAM and they were like talking about 3-4 of her designers like Ali Zishans and Mohsin
Right.
Naveed Ranjaz and they were like, we love them.
Right.
So I think that changed my mind of how do we need to approach the problem.
Right.
That if we are able to get this big inventory together, and obviously like one of our mission was in Pakistan to digitize this industry and create
Right.
these opportunities out there. So as a result, I think we are able to get to the point of doing this largest consumer shipments out of Pakistan today. I think we are one of the largest DHL users out of Pakistan today.
I see.
So I think the idea is that we really want to target the entire South Asian community
Right,
living
okay.
anywhere in the world.
Right.
And,
So it's more on the consumer side, not much on, where the products are coming from. Like
Product
these
is
are only
100%
Pakistani
Pakistan.
products.
Yeah.
Right. What's the breakdown of international and Pakistani customers or orders?
So I think we every third order is out of Pakistan.
Every third order is out of Pakistan.
Yeah.
And how has that changed over the last, 2 years? Has it have you?
It kind of like it's interesting that the seasonality plays a big role.
Right.
So, for example, when Eid is nearby, a lot of international people start to do online shopping, but the
Okay.
local people want to go in stores and do shopping.
Right. Right.
So there is like these weird cycles.
Right.
Every quarter, the cycles change a bit. But if I look at holistically, the numbers haven't changed a lot, to be honest, for us.
Okay.
Maybe if I look at the first 6 months, it was like every third order was from Pakistan
Right.
to the other way around now. Because we were only in very high priced luxury items.
Right.
And people outside of Pakistan were willing to buy that online. People in Pakistan wanted to go and do shopping in person. And then when we came into more mass market, then the numbers have stayed around this, what we just talked about.
Right. And for the orders that you get from Pakistan, what percentage of those are from customers who are making payments online?
In Pakistan?
Yeah. I mean, international orders are, they're all online.
Yes.
But in Pakistan,
Very little. I think it's somewhere around 10 to 15%.
10 to 15%.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the number has stayed stagnant like over the last, at least in terms of, the major e-commerce platforms that I know. Maybe, people are becoming more acceptable to, online payments and all. But from what I keep hearing, this is the number that has stayed the same. What do you think we can do to improve this number in Pakistan? I mean, digital payments is going to obviously play a very big role in how e-commerce evolves over the next 5 to 10 years. So what is it that's not there? Apart from, very low penetration of, let's say, credit cards, what else is missing?
I think that what I am really looking at is that some of these startups that are coming in and making it easy, like Sada Pays or Naya Pays, I hope they're able to scale out really fast and make that adoption go a lot broader. But if you look at, I think the journey to get a card in Pakistan, obviously in US I have done this. In Pakistan when I did this is that all those biometrics and fun part. So you realize there is a lot of friction.
Right, yeah.
To be honest, I think for the normal middle class person, it should be very, very straightforward and simple. It should be encouragement to do that rather than a lot of discouragement to do that. So I'm hoping some of these players will really scale out and make it everybody recognizes that. And the other is this micro payment systems like these Easy Paisas or Jazz Cash. Hopefully they would start to scale up as well, and the mode of payment would become digital rather than this cash.
Right. If you could go back in time, when you started LAAM, and change some of the things that you did early on, or maybe throughout this journey, what would those be? What would be top two?
I think I probably would. My worst time period was, to be honest, in the first year or so, we had these very bad patches of LAAM being not reliable. So
and when you say LAAM being not reliable, do you mean in terms of ship delivery or?
So there are two bad things that can happen, right?
Right.
One bad thing that can happen is that you take an order and you don't deliver that on time.
Right. Okay.
That is the first miscommitment that
Right.
you can do with the consumer. The second is you deliver something that people do not like. And we compute these numbers very, very carefully now.
Okay.
So we have stats and
Right,
dashboards
okay.
around everything.
Right.
In the start, we did not think of that deep enough.
Right.
And when we started to scale, we got a lot of heat
Right.
for that. And I think that was a very low time. And to be honest, like I think
Like, would customers reach out to you, or they'll just post this on Voice of Customer or something? Like,
all of those.
Right. Okay.
Even to be honest, like now our NPS is one of the best and all of that, but we still see some of those stories coming out. Like,
Right.
oh, I tried 2 years ago and
Okay.
they messed up my order and they did not deliver for 20 days and stuff.
Right.
So now I think what we probably should have done from the get-go is we should have solved those problems, realizing that if we are working with a fashion business and that fashion business delays the order, it's still our name on the line. So we should have built the technology and the systems and all the protocols around it in a different way. If I have to go back in time, I'd probably do that before I scale
Right.
and do it well.
Right. 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 I mean, that makes a lot of sense. When we talk about fashion businesses, obviously the entire model depends on them. You selling their products to customers.
Yeah.
When you speak to them, and I'm sure you speak to them on, very regular basis. What is it that they tell you? Have you actually helped them increase their sales, or is it that LAAM has just come in and taken a share from their sale and made it easy for the consumer to get those products? What is it that you normally hear?
So there are very, very interesting stories about. So we work with a startup business, fashion startup, that launched on LAAM. I remember that entrepreneur got 2 stitching units, and started the brand.
Right.
And I think I visited 2 of their factories, where
Right.
they have about close to 250 people
I see.
that build products. And I looked at that one brand particularly, and we had shipped their product to 70 plus countries.
I see.
So that has scaled 100% on LAAM.
So they were exclusively selling on LAAM.
They still do.
They don't have any online presence of
They
their
don't have
own.
any online presence. They have no offline presence.
Wow.
They are on
Okay.
LAAM. So we have a lot of such what we call SMEs
Right.
that we built
Right.
in this digital economy.
Right.
And one interesting analysis that we did, where we added those 150 people, then we looked at another business, we added 300 people. So we added all of them together once, and we had created more than 10,000 jobs for the businesses. So 10,000 plus jobs of extra orders that they were getting.
Right. Right.
So some of the big manufacturers that we started working with, so let's say they were manufacturing 10,000 units for the offline,
Right.
and we added 3,000, 4,000 or something
Right.
like that.
Right. Right.
So there is not that just zero sum game when you come online. There is still massive offline, and the online is some of the players that are becoming bigger. It's additive on top of that most of the time.
Right. Right. I actually have a lot more questions on this dealing with businesses and all, but I think we're running out of time. So the last one: anyone trying to build a startup in Pakistan today that's focused on Pakistani consumer, what would be your one piece of advice to them?
I think there are different phases of building a startup. Like I called out, one is the product market fit. The other is trying to figure out how to scale. Be very careful about understanding when it's your hypothesis or the data shows you that you are a product market fit before you go out to scale. I think for people, when I meet folks who are trying to build their startup, I ask them how do they know they work, and most of the time it turns out because they have strong belief it will work.
Right.
So I think that is one thing that I would really call out to folks who are just starting out.
Right. I mean, that's a brilliant piece of advice. Thank you so much, Arif, for joining us and sharing everything about LAAM with us. Obviously, like I said, I had a few more questions, but I think we've run out of time. So, maybe we'll leave them for another day. It was a pleasure to have you here, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank
you so much for coming in. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. See you on the next episode of Scalable very soon.
I give you an example. when we launched COLABS, we had only launched partial of the building, which was the ground floor and the first floor. We would make decisions with regards to where to invest, directly linking to if we are going to invest this 10 million rupees, what revenue is it going to convert to?
Okay.
And that is what founders are doing today. Right? It's about investing money where you actually think that you're going to get an ROI. It's a very traditional approach of accounting and analysis, but I think that is the approach we had from day one. Obviously, growth and scale both have to be linked. We have grown over 100%, year on year, the last few years, and we are very focused on growth, but it has to be sustainable growth. Growth, if it is not sustainable, like a lot of other companies globally, where they are just using venture money to show unrealistic numbers, does not really help the business.